Hey guys, this is Mr. Walls here. If you are listening to this video, you are listening to a recording from this week's lesson. I hope that you gained some information. If you did not copy all the information from this week's lesson, please make sure you copy the notes. The notes are online as well, but this is the video with the notes in it. I want to talk about, before we get into the live portion, there is a live portion to this lesson where you will hear me interacting with students. What is the difference between MOV and MP3? MOV is video and audio, and MP3 is just audio. MOV is video and audio, and MP3 is just audio. So when you record or export your video files from Final Cut or Adobe Premiere, you are exporting MOV, or sometimes you're exporting MP4. When you do the same thing for GarageBand or any audio editing software, you're exporting in MP3. The remaining of this recording is a live recording from class. Enjoy. All right, so what I want to help you guys work on is that in the news world, okay, first off, I'm gonna say this, and you sit up on a lot of this is my notes that you just see on the screen. News never sleeps. In the news world, if you walk into a news station, a reporter is constantly moving, constantly, and the time frame that they have to get their reports back to the station is sometimes quick minutes or just a few hours. They have to go out and film it, get it back to the station, whether they are going live or it's a recorded package, and they have to send it back to the station. So, yes, I have more experience than some of you. But again, I've said this before, some of you can do things that I cannot do when it comes to editing. Okay? So far as the experience go, it's all in how much time you invest in what you do. Okay, so do you have enough time to get these things done? Absolutely. Have you been using the time wisely? Some of you, absolutely. Some of you, no. Every second counts in the news world. Every second something happens in the news world. As a news reporter, you have to know how to go out and come in the station with news reports. Can you let Avery in? You should have a story every time you come into a news station. Writing your script when you walk into the room is not always okay for a news producer to see that. He wants you to come in. Can you just change your attendance? He or she wants you to come in ready with a report. Sometimes they'll give you a report. But if they give you that report, they want you to turn that report around quickly. So that means you prepping, you writing your script, you getting the research done early. Knowing what search engines to go to get the information you need. Okay? They give you times for these reports. They say, hey, I need you to fill 2 minutes in the news show. You have to fill 2 minutes because they don't have nothing else to put there. They want you to fill 2 minutes in the show. So if you don't fill 2 minutes in the show, you're going to a meeting with the producer and the owner of the news station, which was probably going to be a conversation that goes like this: do it again, you're fired. So the time frame that you have is plenty of time, because all I ask you to do is fill 1 minute with a 5-second slate. But if you use that time wisely if you're the reporter, okay, this is what happened when I met up with Kate. I said, Kate, this is what I want you to do. I need you to do a report on Bill of Rights, okay? The reason we're doing Bill of Rights, since some of you want to know, is because in this class, in most of your electives are not just electives anymore, so FYI. It's not just like, yay, fun. Because when I was growing up, PE was yay, fun. We didn't do no writing and there was no tests. Y'all have tests now in PE. What? Okay, so electives are not just electives anymore. We have to add different academic pieces into our classes. So you're going to see different pieces like this in this class for your weekly reports, just FYI. But it's a piece that you can do. It's things that you can go to your teachers and say, hey, you're a reliable source. And that's another thing some of you reporters need to work on. Go to reliable sources. So if I'm doing Bill of Rights, there's history teachers here, right? Right. You got 1 minute. 1 minute for a report. You don't want to pull out all 10. Kate didn't. I told her, I said, find the main point that you want to drive home with this. And she did. She didn't go through all 10 of them because she has 1 minute. So she used her time wisely. She prepared it. I met up with her. Okay. I didn't say, and I see your hand, so you might want to write your question down because I'm going to say this and then I'll come to you. I didn't say, hey, go ahead and get your report written, write your script, and then we're going to go in there and film. Nope. I met up with her. Pre-production. Pre-production is crucial. You've heard this several times. If your pre-production isn't good, your production and post-production is not going to be good. This is the reason I raised the bar. Because I think if we make our pre-production amazing, we could put out quality stuff. So if we plan and use our time wisely, before it's time to meet the deadline, I think we'll be fine. So if I go to reliable sources, if I do my research, I find the main points. So what's the message that I want to drive home when I look at this? What is it that I want my viewers to know? Oh, Mr. Wallace, everybody already know about Bill of Rights. We've learned this already. We don't want to talk about this. Okay, how could you make this creative? How could you take this piece and say, okay, I want to talk about this point. I want to talk about that point. Whatever the point is for you, look at this and figure out what is it that you want to talk about because you only have a minute to talk about it. So once you figure that out, and then Kate's reliable source was Mr. Winters. I said, go to Mr. Winters, get some input from him because he teaches this. So he's the expert. So why not get help from an expert who teaches this? So now when I write my script, I have this paper, I have the reliable resource, Mr. Winters, and my knowledge. So now I'm going to put together a creative script that will drive the message home. That's it. It's just that simple on the reporter side. But how do I know it's going to be a minute? Well, when you meet with your editor / videographer, that's what they're called, and that's what you are right now. So if you're the camera person, you're not just a camera person. A videographer is someone who knows how to run camera and edit. I'm not that good at it. Okay, that's okay. You'll get there. So you have to meet with that person. That's what I did with Kate. We talked about what we're going to do. She said, I have a creative idea. I want to add a little skit in this. Okay, I need an extra person. Okay, ring, ring, ring. Can I get an extra person? Ta-da, extra person. Okay, I see all 3 hands and I'll get to you. Write your questions. Okay, there was 2 others. Okay, so I knew before we went into the studio that we needed an extra person. I didn't wait for us to get in the studio and say, we need an extra person. Too late. So we managed our time wisely because in the news world, every second counts. So if you don't plan that, don't expect it. Okay? So, when I met with Kate, we timed out her report. Some of you are not meeting with each other and timing out your report. You're waiting till you get in front of the camera and hoping that you can get a minute out of it. You can take away, but you can't add. Yes, I can. No, you can't. Not if it's going to be good. If you're going to throw something together, then yeah, you can add. It's going to come out bad. But Kate report, actually, if I would have took the whole thing that she gave me, we timed it was a minute. But with the pauses and maybe a few hiccups here and there, and her repeating something that I didn't hear when we filmed it, and I took it back and looked at it, if I would have left it just like that, it was 1 minute and 4 seconds without Slate. So what did I do to get rid of that? So I'm going to tell you right now. I bladed a lot of her pauses, okay? And I took out those long pauses. So that backed up the time more. That part where she repeated herself twice and she said the same thing twice, gone. Now I'm at 105 with 0 frames. So it is possible to make it 1 minute and 5 seconds with 0 frames. Okay? Yes. I'll show you in a second. Yes. Okay. I'll get those questions in a second. I hear you. Hold on 1 second. Please don't start talking with your neighbor. So here are some ways to prepare. Okay. The biggest thing I think you guys need to work on is having your script done before you walk in the room. So doing your research, write your script. Don't try to memorize your script. You always teach us to memorize our script. Well, here's a tip to help you. Because the reason I think most of you struggle with your pieces because they're long. After you make a script, make bullet points. Okay, I'm going to talk about this. This is a key word that'll help me remember this line. I'm going to talk about this. This is a key word to help me with. Make bullet points. That'll help you so you don't have to try to remember an entire script. Okay? I've talked about practicing. Please practice with your partner. Please practice with your partner, because if you don't know if they're totally prepared. Because you know this. You have to have charisma and personality, correct? Okay? You have to have the right emotion behind the report, correct? So if it's something sad like, 9/11, should I sound like I'm happy that a whole bunch of people died? No. But how do I know, as the videographer, how do I know what my report is going to sound like if I don't do it before they get in front of the camera? So practice these things. To make your videos better as the videographer, if you know what their script's about, because you guys talk, you can create graphics, you can bring in pictures. I already knew, okay, and I know I told you in the past, right, you have to write all your stuff out. As the videographer, with the time frame you have, my smart people who will remember these things, and that should be majority of you in here. If you're really, really good and you can remember things, you don't have to write it. I had a conversation with Kate. I knew exactly, when she told me what her script was about, I knew exactly where I wanted to go. So I got in front of the computer and laid it out exactly how I wanted. Sound effects, you heard a siren. I knew what kind of music I wanted. I knew that when I used the green screen, that I wanted to change the background because it changed the mood, it changed the setting, so that when we had the cop scene, you knew she was a cop, besides what she said. It painted a picture for you because I set the scene. You play a part as the videographer. As the editor, you play a big part. But if you don't plan that early, you won't ever get it right. What helped them get a 28 Malik and Thomas, there's scenery. There's other things, but the scenery played a big part. So think about those things when you're recording. Don't just go out there and record. Okay? Um, please reserve your equipment early. And here are some tips. You already know the assignment. It's the Bill of Rights. Okay? And I'll get questions after this slide. Please find a main point that you want to drive home. Please find a main point that you want to drive home. But make sure it's going to be a minute long. Okay? Make sure you have your slate. And then I'll pause before I give tips. I had a question, I think, David.
You want us to, like, if you want to just talk about 1 minute, can you just talk about 1 minute and then explain it?
Yeah. Yeah. There was another hand, Natalia.
For like extras, you know how like kids
Mm-hmm.
do you pick them or like do we just choose anybody?
You choose anyone. Who? Ken?
So like if we had can we do like more than one main point?
Yeah. Just make sure it's a minute with a 5-second slate. Yes, Lake.
So like the music, what if like we can't? It's like something off of YouTube that we use, but like we can't get it.
I honestly,
That doesn't work on my computer.
yeah, because of testing, a lot of sites that we want to grab to get the YouTube things are blocked here. I'm a producer at my church, and a lot of those sites work there. I come here, I can't download them. So honestly, that was a really good report to me. I could have did more, but that was a really solid report to me, and I didn't need YouTube. I know you hate audio blocks, but my report got the message across without YouTube. So that's my suggestion, because they're blocking everything right now because of testing. Yes.
You can get a YouTube video just by like downloading it to your phone and then emailing it to the computer.
Listen, if you get it to work, fine. I don't know how to get that to work right now. Okay. So now, here's some tips. Okay. I've talked about your topic and not assuming that everyone understands what the Bill of Rights is. Like, there's somebody who probably sat in a class with a history teacher and they're still clueless as to what this is. Okay?
What?
Kobe. Shh. Kobe. Okay? Make it creative. You can add a skit in there. Okay? Of course, if it's not a topic that you should add a skit to make it entertaining, don't do that. But there's ways to make something that in your eyes is boring to make it better. Okay? And I'll help you in a second to talk about that. I'm sorry, Avery, you had your hand up earlier. Oh, not today. Time your partner, we talked about that. Make sure your partner has a good tone, pitch, and tempo. That's the biggest problem, is the tempo. Everybody's tempo is going really fast. Okay? Slow down. Yes.
That kind of works better if you don't know your script too well, because then if you know your script well, you're just going to start saying it really fast.
That's good. That's good. Everybody heard that?
You get to think about it.
That's a good point. Okay. I talked about using the correct emotions. I talked about, as an editor, you need to make sure you pick the right location. Your location should pick what the report is talking about. understanding how to use the studio and to use the studio lights. Majority of you in here know how to do that. Some of you in here are still lost. So I'm going to explain. So, if you use the green screen with the lighting that we have, you have to be 10 feet away from that green wall. If you're a reporter, let's say this is the camera, I'm the reporter. If the reporter can touch the end of that black desk, you're in the right spot. If they can touch the end of the black news desk in there, you're in the right spot. For the camera person, if you're standing and there's two shelves over here, if you're standing in between the shelves and the big softbox light that is going towards the news set, you're in the right spot. If you're not in none of those areas, your stuff is going to look bad. Lastly, about the green screen. If you use the tall, harsh lights, when I say harsh, that means you turn them on, and if you look at them, which you shouldn't, you look at them when you turn them on, you just go blind for a second. Those are called harsh lights, okay? Those, you only need 2 of them on. And you need the fluorescents on at all time when you're filming in there. Please turn those on. The regular lights, yes. Okay. When you're using the desk, before I was telling people to only use 2 of the lights, the black desk. Only use 2 of the lights, but I've seen people use the fluorescent lights and 3 of the lights. That third light that's more close to the green wall, you just need to put that on the mark that's on the floor, point it towards the desk, and that area is lit. But you have to have the fluorescent lights. The fluorescent lights are balancing out the entire room for you, for that section, okay? For this set, you guys all typically know how to use this one. You use the soft boxes, okay? Those are the bigger lights that are standing right here. One is right here by this door, and the other 2 are off to the side. Make sure those are pointing at the set, and your lighting is going to be even. If you don't, your stuff is not going to look good, and then you're going to be mad with your score. So if you use the studio, please use it correctly, okay? Please make sure you white balance, whether you are in the studio or you're out there. If you don't white balance, just know that when we start talking about camera shots again, and I add camera shots to the rubric, I'm going to take points from you. Right now, camera shots are not on there. We talk about camera shots and telling people they need to get better at them, but that's not on the rubric. So I'm not grading your camera shots, but I will be grading your camera shots because I'm going to update the rubric. So make sure you white balance. Yes.
If you change the camera shot, you don't have to put in like transition, right?
You don't. Okay. Make sure you have headphones. You guys are typically good about that. Probably one of the better classes that's good about that. Check your equipment before you leave the room. I don't think you guys have too many problems with that. Every once in a while that happens. I said this before, and I'll show you what I'm talking about now. As an editor, if you're editing and my report is over by 4 seconds or 5 seconds, I can shorten it by using the blade tool, and I'll show you where I did that at. Right here? Yeah, okay. I'll show you some other spots. All right, so I bladed those areas and I took out those long pauses that she gave me. Those long pauses are not bad, okay? Especially if that person is trying to make sure it's a minute long. We practiced several times before we went in front of the camera, and the first few times she didn't have the right emotion, she did not have the right pauses, all of that wasn't there. After like the 3rd or 4th time, she got it, and I had something to work with, okay? I had something to work with. So you can take those long pauses out, and now my piece is 1 minute and 5 seconds. with 0 frames, that's what this is right here. Natalia, you asked about that.
So now if we get frames off, we get 5 points off. What? No, you said we can have frames off.
I'm telling you now, as of this week, this is how you make it 1 minute and 5 seconds. And if it's not 1 minute and 5 seconds, it's going to be off, and it won't be 1 minute and 5 seconds. Yes.
Isn't there a way to like change the frames so you can go by each frame, so you can get like cut it exactly at the right amount of frames?
I'm not sure what you're saying. I'm not sure what you're saying.
Like you saying, like you
There's
just
a way
go
where
by
you
like
just
frame
set
by
frames.
frame. Yeah, and so if you get like the arrow.
Oh, yeah. That's what you're talking about?
Yeah, so then you can make it exactly that type.
Yeah. Yeah. Or here's another tip. Make sure your snap tool is on. This right here. This snaps things in place.
Oh, I like
Boom.
that. I like that one. What?
That snapped it in place right there. So this graphic, I see you can. Give me 1 second. Okay, so this lower third right here that I created, I don't want it to come in I don't want it to still be on the screen, and I don't want it to come off. I want it to come off before Bill of Rights come in. So I made sure that it stopped right there. So now when Bill of Rights come in, it's gone. Okay? So if you have this on, you won't have any problems. Everything will snap just how you want it to snap in. Okay? We talked about changing your shots. Okay? Change your shots. That's another tip. You guys are good at that. If you're using the green screen, try something different. Okay? Change the background so that the scene and everything that the person is talking about changes. And then it's not a jump cut. And it's creative. Okay? We talked about that. We talked about the frames and making sure it's 1 minute and 5. Here's some creative tips. Write these down. Creative tips. Write these down. All right. Of course, you know you need visuals. So camera angles, shots, video transitions. These are creative things that will help your report. Learning, this is not on here, but learning how to key things. So if I want to add movement to a picture, that picture of the rule book, that book didn't move by itself. I had to animate that, okay? And if you don't know how to do these things, there are people in here who know how to do that. If I'm not able to get over to you, they can show you how to do that, okay? So adding some sort of animation to your stuff, that's a creative aspect. Adding sound effects. So instead of just hearing Kaylee say, you have the right to blah, 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 and then having a background, you heard the siren. But remember, the music or your sound effects should not be louder than your reporter, or you're going to lose points in sound. Graphics with your text. Then last but not least, music. All of these things will help drive your entire report.